Oh, sorry, I thought you were saying with. Okay. Thank you very much to the community for your patience. We are now ready to move on to agenda item 3, which is to consider a tentative map, architectural and site approval, and tree removal permit for the construction of a 51-unit townhome condominium development on housing element priority housing sites 25 through 28 with Summerhill Homes. The public hearing is now open, and do we have a staff report?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just want to have a few comments on this. You had just touched on it, though, that for people in attendance, this is a housing element priority housing site. We know there was a lot of community interest in this project. The site was put on the housing element in the summer of 2024. About a year later, this site had always been in a high fire hazard zone, but a year after that, in 2025, it was reclassified as a very high fire hazard zone site, which the city in July of last year adopted the updated fire maps and updated its building code so we would be compliant with the change, which originated with CAL FIRE and state law. So those, I suspect, will be some of the competing comments we get tonight. This project, unlike the last project we talked about, being a multifamily project, is subject to density bonus, SB 330, and a lot of the typical housing laws that we have seen that have placed more limitations on what discretionary bodies are able to do. So with that, I will turn the meat of the presentation over to Emmy. I do know the developer and their team are here tonight as well, and we'll have a presentation. And we also have one representative from Santa Clara County Fire and our team that prepared the CEQA document with David J. Powers. So we got quite a few people here actually in person.
Thank you very much. Excuse me, I forgot to do ex parte communications. So may we please do that disclosure now? We'll go left to right, starting with Commissioner Lindskog.
I met with the developers who took me through the detailed plans.
I did not meet with the developer.
I have met with the developer multiple times, as well as the community members. Thank you.
Likewise, met with the developer, met with the community as well.
And same for me. I met with the developers and have spoken with people in the community.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Thank you again, Chair Casultron and Commissioners. Amy Sugiyama, planning staff here today now to discuss the Summerhill Homes request for a housing development project. This property is located on Linda Vista Drive. It's within the Monte Vista neighborhood and adjacent to Deep Cliff Golf Course. The property is zoned R3TH for medium-high density multifamily with townhome allowances. The site currently has 4 single-family residences, one on each parcel. The city received a preliminary application under Senate Bill 330 in October of 2024, which vested the project standards to those that were in place at the time that that application was submitted. Additionally, the project site was identified as a priority housing site, sites number 25 through 28, and was rezoned for medium high density housing through the city's 6th cycle housing element update. The project makes use of a number of state housing laws, including the Housing Accountability Act, which acts as a limit to the city's ability to deny or condition the project. Additionally, it stipulates that the city cannot apply non-objective standards to a housing development project. SB 330, otherwise known as the Housing Crisis Act, streamlines the permitting process, and as previously noted, it allows the applicant to lock in or vest fees and standards that are in place at the time that they submit an application. The project also makes use of the state's density bonus law, which allows for additional units, waivers, concessions, and reduced parking standards. For this project, the applicant is only proposing to make use of the allowed concessions and waivers. Finally, the city is subject to the requirements of the No Net Loss Law under Senate Bill 166, which requires that the city maintain a list of housing sites that can accommodate the required RHNA. As noted in the staff report, the city is currently unable to meet the required RHNA with the sites identified and is working to identify additional sites for housing. The housing element projected 84 units being provided on this site. The project proposes 51, fewer than the expected units. and will require that the city identify a new location for the units to meet RENA. Okay. Here you can see an overview of the project's consistency with typical development requirements. The project proposes to build at the lowest allowed density for the site. The applicant has also increased the side yard setbacks adjacent to neighboring residences and the rear setback adjacent to Deep Cliff Golf Course. Additionally, the applicant is utilizing state density bonus law waivers to address some of these requirements. These waivers will be discussed in detail later in this presentation. Okay. The project consists of 51 townhome-style condominium units spread across 10 buildings with 10 below-market rate units and 41 market rate units. There is a mix of 3 to 6 units per building, with each building being 3 stories. The proposed units range from about 2,300 square feet to about 2,800 square feet. 50 new trees will be planted on site, and 2 existing oak trees along shared property lines will be protected in place. And then the project also includes a vesting tentative map for condominium purposes. Here you can see the proposed site layout with the 10 buildings oriented parallel to Linda Vista Drive and the site divided by Avulich Court, which is an existing public right-of-way. The proposed BMR units are identified by the red dots, and it should also be noted that each unit has a 2-car garage. Here you can see a rendering of the proposed project showing a view of the buildings from Linda Vista Drive. The project has been found to be consistent with the applicable objective standards of the city's general plan, below market rate housing manual, and municipal code. And the project includes one concession under the density bonus law to waive the requirements for BMR units to be comparable to market rate units in terms of the unit type. I'll note that concessions and waivers proposed under the density bonus law can only be denied under specific circumstances, including that they have an adverse impact on historic property, health, or safety. In addition to this concession, the applicant is also utilizing 5 density bonus waivers. For each of these waivers, the applicant has noted that imposing the standards could potentially result in the elimination of units, reduced floor areas, or substantial changes to the design of the buildings, which is not consistent with the project as proposed by the applicant. The first of the 5 waivers is to allow for a modification of the required 12-foot street side setback along Avulich Court to instead have a 3-foot 7-inch setback. The second waiver is to allow for a reduction of the required 6-foot clearance for private open space. The applicant is proposing varying dimensions, with the smallest dimension being 4.5 feet. The final 3 waivers would allow for an increase in the height of the buildings from the 30-foot maximum to a total of 40 feet 7 inches on the high end, an increase to the maximum floor area ratio from the allowed 85% to a 136% of the net lot area, and a reduction in the required size of parking spaces from 9.5 by 20 feet to 9.5 by 18.5 feet. It should also be noted that for purposes of planning, the maximum height is measured from the natural grade to the peak roof. And while not required as part of this planning entitlement, the project will be required to provide public art following project approval. At this time, the applicant is proposing to provide a public art plaza in the southern corner of the Avulich Court and Linda Vista intersection. Based on the site's characteristics, staff is recommending and the applicant has requested payment of the parkland in lieu fees consistent with the QnB Act. The applicant is also proposing a pedestrian and bike trail connection between the project site and Stevens Creek Trail. Should it be approved, the applicant is requesting a credit towards park in lieu fees for the cost of construction to connect up to $377,000. The project was also reviewed against the city's BMR requirements, and staff found that the BMR units are generally comparable in size to the market rate units, with BMR units being an average of about 2,350 and the market rate units being about 2,700 square feet. The project has been found to qualify for the statutory exemption under the provisions of Assembly Bill 130. In the analysis for this exemption, the third-party reviewers of the city reviewed the environmental reports that are listed here and confirmed that the project would not have significant effects on the environment and meets the criteria for the statutory exemption. The exemption outlined in AB 130 also includes a number of processing timelines, which require the city to make a decision on this project by April 4th. As I previously noted, the site was included in the housing element update, which increased the allowed density in July of 2024. Following the rezoning of the site, the applicant submitted their SB 330 preliminary application, vesting the standards that were in place at that time. Approximately 4 months later, CAL FIRE hazard maps were updated, which now indicate that the project site is in the very high fire hazard severity zone. Consistent with the requirements for the AB 130 exemption, the project was reviewed under and found to be consistent with the current standards for development within very high fire hazard severity zones. The project has received a number of public inquiries and comments throughout its review. As such, in addition to the standard noticing that would typically be sent to neighbors within 300 feet, the city sent mailed notices to an over 1,000-foot radius and provided electronic notifications to those who had signed up to receive them. The majority of the public comments related to the concerns with project's density, anticipated traffic impacts, and a perceived increased risk for fire. And with that, staff recommends that you adopt the resolutions to approve the permits. This is based on the revised resolutions that were provided to you all as a desk item. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions from the commission? Commissioner Rao.
Thank you. Is it possible to project attachment 7 with the AB 130 exemption checklist?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the commission before we move on to the applicant? Okay, then I think we're ready to move on to the applicant presentation.
Oh, we were taking questions of staff?
sorry, I asked. Did anyone?
Yeah, we have a question
We're still
and they're
waiting
pulling
for
it up. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Thank you for your patience with that. And then if I could have video share my screen. Thank you.
Thank you. If you might scroll down to the checklist. I guess we can zoom this. There we go. I guess we can zoom this. Is there any way you can zoom this?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So if you scroll down to the next page.
Okay.
All right. So there's number 5, item number 4. Can you comment on, I guess it starts on the previous page, item number 4.
Okay.
Yeah. So which of these categories does the project meet? Are we saying the existing 4 single-family residences qualify it as an existing urban use?
For this infill exemption, it's pretty similar to the Class 32 categorical exemption we've had. Pretty much any urbanized area, any incorporated city is going to meet the criteria for an infill development. So this site is in a developed area. It has utilities. While it's adjacent to a golf course and single-family homes, those are development. So it would clearly meet the criteria.
Okay, so it's probably the last bullet on that page. At least 75% within a quarter mile is open use.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Good. Thank you. If you can scroll down a little bit further. Right there. The project is consistent with the existing general plan or zoning for the site. How should we understand the overlap between density bonus waivers and consistency with the general plan when the proposed project seeks density bonus waivers? Is that for the purpose of this exemption still considered consistent with the general plan?
That's correct. Density bonus, the waivers do not take you out of, say, inconsistency with zoning or general plan. So you're looking at the project. In this case, you have a project that is coming in with the R3TH zone. It is a townhome development. It's within the 20 to 35 density range. And the density bonus waivers can't be used as a means to say it's now inconsistent with the general plan or zoning.
Okay. And is there, I don't know if Attorney Wu has any guidance on this. Is this based on staff discretion and interpretation, or is there state law that talks about how the overlap of density bonus waivers occurs with the AB 130 exemption criteria?
Yeah, I think Assistant Director Connolly accurately described the status.
Okay. So the state law itself does not speak to this, does it?
It does. Yeah, there is a stipulation specifically in AB 130 or in the Public Resources Code that states that we cannot use a waiver or concession or request thereof to say that it's no longer consistent with our general plan or zoning.
Okay. Thank you. There's the next item there. If you scroll down, I believe it talks about the fire hazard severity zone. Is there a question here on that? Yeah, there it is, number 7. So just zoning in on the fire hazard severity zone, can you comment on what the AB 130 exemption criteria is? I understand you're listing a fire mitigation strategy that suffices. Who makes that determination? Is it planning commission? Is it planning staff? Is it the fire department?
The CEQA determination is always going to be the city's determination. We're the lead agency for CEQA, so we can't transfer that away. But this is in a very high fire hazard zone, which under AB 130 is something that could disqualify you, except if you read further on that where it says within a very high fire hazard zone, this subparagraph does not apply to sites that have adopted fire hazard mitigation measures pursuant to existing building standards or state fire mitigation measures applicable to the development, which this project does. So that is where essentially if you had a project that was in a very high fire hazard zone and it was not compliant with now the current building standards that are required, say for defensible space or anti-combustible materials, then you would not be able to apply AB 130. Since this project does, it is compliant and AB 130 would be applicable.
And specifically, I think if you scroll down, it talks about how this mitigation is met. Is that on the next page?
Yes, they are correct. I think that goes to the top of the next page. So it cites
Okay, right there.
Chapter 7A of the Building Code.
And so that list that you have, which talks about the fire sprinklers within 30 feet and using fire-resistant material within 30 feet and so on, that matches the state law statutes and what would satisfy that fire hazard mitigation?
Yes, that would be with the current standards for construction in a very high fire hazard zone.
And again, who makes the determination? Is it fire or is it planning commission, planning staff?
We rely on county fire review to make that determination since they're the technical experts in this area.
Okay. And is there any written evidence submitted by fire for this hearing?
Well, we do have a representative here, and I know a memo was submitted indicating their approval of the project as designed.
So if I may, Chair, I think this section is reserved for questions from the presentation to the extent any commissioners have any. Some of these questions, I wonder whether it's more appropriate for when we get to the discussion portion of this.
Sounds good. I will hold for the questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the commission for staff?